Would you like an 8K camera? Would you like a RED 8K camera? This is the one for you.
V-Raptor.
This is our, actually not even...
You want...
So this is actually not our first RED. This is our third RED. We had the Stormtrooper Komodo. We absolutely fell in love with it. We bought a B camera, a black Komodo, which we then sold because we wanted to upgrade to the V-Raptor. The main reason we wanted to upgrade to the V-Raptor is the frame rates and resolutions you can shoot in. The color science is about the same. You have a bit more flexibility due to the tiny bit higher dynamic range. There's a little bit of downside with the rolling shutter, but in general the frame rates and resolutions you can shoot in is the reason why we upgraded. This camera has a 8K Vista Vision sensor. It's kind of like full frame, but cool branding, I guess. This means you can actually get 35.4 megapixel stills out of it. So if you're shooting video and you say, oh shit, this is a cool frame, I want this in a picture, you can get raw pictures in 35 megapixels out of it, which is just crazy. You have 17 plus stops of dynamic range. You have the fastest rolling shutter in any RED camera, obviously still not as good as the Komodo, which is global, but like twice as fast as the Monstro, which is really cool. And you also have, of course, RED RAW and all these other goodies that RED has. Oh yeah, and an RF mount, so you can basically adapt anything you want. We normally use EF and PL lenses. As you can see, this camera is actually quite small. The thing is though that once we start putting all of these things on it, it won't be small anymore. It's actually quite impressive how much they've managed to cram into this small body. Once we actually start to put everything on it, it's not super small anymore, but it's still, like, compared to other REDs, it's very, very impressive. As I said before, the frame rate is the main reason I bought it. You can go all the way up to 8K 120. I normally shoot 6K, which means that the sensor basically acts like a Super 35 sensor, which means you can actually use APS-C lenses quite well. You have some vignetting if you're using the 18-35 fully wide open, so I usually use it around 20mm. Then you don't get some of the worst vignetting. It's still a little bit, but I mean, it's not too bad. Shooting in 6K also means you'll get even crazier frame rates. You'll get 6K up to 160 FPS. I normally shoot around 150 because it's easier to multiply by 25 because we're using 25K timelines, 25K. Because we're usually delivering 25 FPS videos, it looks better if you're not multiplying it by 550% the speed because it's a bit choppier. So yeah, 6K 150, it's crazy. You'll eat up a lot of data. I shot an event like 2 weeks ago. I used 2 terabytes in 4 hours. So yeah, get some big cards, you'll need it. As I said before, the camera has 17 stops of dynamic range, or 17 plus, whatever that means. It's actually quite incredible because you can shoot out the window and it'll still not look completely shit. RED also does this really nice thing where they desaturate the colors that get close to hitting or getting overexposed. It becomes a nice curve instead of everything just becoming super white at once. Shooting overexposed footage doesn't look necessarily as bad as it does on other cameras. One thing that is actually worse on this than the Komodo is the fact that it has a rolling shutter. The shutter is very quickly rolling. But it's supposed to be like 2 times faster than the fastest RED camera, which is I think the RED Monstro. Obviously the RED Komodo's global shutter is better, but if you're using like really fast strobe lights or if you're in a club or something like this shooting footage with it, then sometimes you'll see this where the strobe lights are like exposed half of the frame. Then I would maybe even go for the Komodo over this. But yeah, in normal cases where you're shooting handheld, it almost looks like Komodo. You get a lot less jelly effect than you do with normal DSLR cameras. So yeah, it's very good, just not quite as good as the Komodo. All right, This is the new RED DSMC3 Touch monitor, and it is actually great. The thing I love most about it is the fact that you have one USB-C cable that you attach and the monitor is powered. You get video transmission and you also get the data transmission for actually controlling all the settings on the camera, which is, gotta say, like, so good. It's so easy to use. You don't have any SDI issues of the SDI burning out, which all 12G cameras have. So this is really cool. The only thing I dislike is that it actually has a rod mount. So normally you have a rod that goes from this screen down to here, which is screw on. As you can tell, we're using NATO rails instead because it's universal. You can attach it however you want. But this means that this rod is in the way every time you try to attach it to a gimbal or something like this. So it's not a perfect solution, but it's super convenient with just the one cable. And they also have a longer version which you can use whenever you're flying it on a gimbal. On this side you have 4 programmable buttons. We have them set up to be peaking, false color, crosshatch, and a auto white balance button, which is actually quite convenient because if you're unsure about the Kelvin, you can see it. I usually end up changing it and modifying it a bit, but you can get an idea of whatever Kelvin you're working with, which is sometimes tricky whenever you're running around in different places. You can change all the camera settings here. You can format the media, change all the settings. You can change ISO, iris, everything you need, and it's with touch. It's really responsive. It's sometimes a bit buggy, which is, I guess, RED specific. But all in all, I'd say this is one of the best monitors you can get with it, simply because it's so easy to use with just the one cable. Even though it sometimes doesn't work perfectly, it's still like a lot better than plugging in 3 cables, one for power, one for video, and one for controlling, which is the other option. Alright, in conclusion, I can't tell if this camera is worth it or not for you. It's a lot of money to spend on getting higher frame rates. For me personally, when I shoot a lot of high energy, like last weekend shooting people running up a ski jumping hill, 2 weeks before then shooting people trying to fly over the ocean, also kind of crazy. Super great to have the frame rates because the flights sometimes lasted for like half a second. Then you can actually get it working when you have a lot of options with slowing the footage down in post. One negative I'd say is the weight comparing to the Komodo. It's a lot heavier and you'll definitely feel it whenever you're flying it on a gimbal. Rolling shutter, obviously also a small drawback, but other than that I really can't think of anything. Oh no, I actually did one more thing. The data is crazy. As I said, like 2 terabytes in a shoot. Other than that, the camera is great, 100% worth it for us and the things we do. If it's worth it for you, that's really up to you. You can try to get a Komodo if you don't have one already and you're watching this video. If the Komodo is great and you love it, all you want is some more frame rates, then this is definitely the thing for you. If you're considering upgrading for DSLR, maybe go for the Komodo first. I love this camera. I won't be trading it for anything because the form factor, the small form factor in combination with the frame rates, RAW, color science, everything, well, I'll hang on to this one for a long while. And finally, what you've been waiting for, here's some test footage from the V-Raptor.